Hi guys, I am going to do a bonus episode where I want to talk to you guys about sovereignty, and more importantly, I want to talk to you obviously about Jeffrey Epstein. He's been a lot in the news lately because Donald Trump is refusing to release his files, as we all knew. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about a scientist, a Harvard-trained mathematician, turned venture capitalist and podcast host, and his name is Eric Weinstein. He coined the term intellectual dark web. He manages a fund at Teal Capital, occasionally posts on theoretical physics, like his geometric unity idea, and hosts the podcast The Portal. So he says that the governments of the world and the very elite want to castrate scientists. And these provocative phrases come from Weinstein's recent appearances where he warns about two concerning trends. One of them is that the government wants to castrate scientists. And this is his metaphorical way of saying governments are increasingly limiting scientific freedom through aggressive regulations, surveillance, and control over research directions. It isn't literal, but a critique that political entities are stripping scientists of autonomy, imposing top-down mandates, and discouraging bold, unconventional inquiry. He also talks a lot about that the world is at the beginning of the end, right? He references all of the wars that are going on simultaneously with no regard for human life. You know, regardless of age, we're seeing children really just being killed or dying in ICE custody, or just there's really no regard for humankind. There's no empathy either. The phrase signals Weinstein's concern that these policies, combined with political polarization and cultural authoritarianism, is eroding free speech as we know it. And it really marks the start of societal decline. It's not about a specific imminent event, but a belief that we're entering a phase where constraints on intellectual and institutional freedom could unravel a lack of progress. So why is scientific freedom under strain? Well, Weinstein argues that state intervention is moving from oversight to censorship, grading ideas as acceptable or unacceptable based on ideology or party goals. Translation, of course, that's what they're doing because they want to make sure that scientists aren't giving you the science behind their eroding business practices that are really making them wealthy. And now, keep in mind every time that you hear about these things that these billionaires have bunkers that they've been building for a good decade, where they tend to, ride out the storm of whatever environmental crash is coming that they know is coming, because they know the science. They just don't want you to know it. And they keep pretending that it isn't real only for your ears. For their ears, they know exactly what's coming, and they know, and they've been hedging against it, right? There's cultural fracturing. He sees ideological silos like identity politics taken to extremes as making discourse brittle. So, we see that here in the United States. I'm going to just give you a few examples of conversations that I've had over the last, decade with people. A very popular sentiment among the Republican MAGA movement is that a couple of things, right? So I know people that say things like, wealthy people, by the way, that say things like, I don't want to pay, for the poor, right? Meanwhile, these same people are receiving subsidies from a lot of things, right? So like if they have a corporation or an LLC, they funnel their money all through the corporation and the LLC. They pretend to make, $10,000 for the year, and, then receive subsidies like Obamacare, even food stamps for themselves and their families, yet they're very wealthy because they own these corporations and these LLCs that they're funneling their money through and pretending to not make any, right? So then they're applying for aid. So even though they're saying, right, I do not want to fund this, but they are in fact themselves stealing from the system. I also know for example, Jewish people that I speak with that are my friends, that have been my friends for more than a decade, more than 2 decades, who say things to me. I don't know many of these. Most of my Jewish friends are anti-Netanyahu and anti what is happening in Gaza, right? They are on the Free Palestine side. But I know some that say, well, why don't they release the hostages, right? Like, they know nothing about the actual conflict. They don't do more research than what MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, or Newsmax tells them, or the New York Times, or the New York Post, or I'm from the Northeast, so that's why I'm mentioning those specific publications. But they just repeat that sort of rhetoric, not really knowing what's going on behind the scenes, which is just a corrupt, Israeli government who has this like Jewish elite mentality where they want to flatten Gaza, get rid of Palestine, and basically take the territory for themselves. That's really what's going on. But the rhetoric is this, and people want to attach themselves to a cause that makes them feel better about themselves. And what better thing to attach yourself to than to a cause that's telling you to hate someone else and not look in the mirror, right? Then there's a loss of institutions. We're seeing that here in the United States, right? The Trump administration, the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, and the Supreme Court are eroding all of our public education systems, right? And our universities, right? They're charging against them. They're suppressing free speech. From universities to mainstream media, erosion of integrity and independence signals institutional collapse. So these themes are consistent with this broader critique that elite control, suppression of thought, and a decline in public good. So what's the context of all of this? Well, Weinstein in particular, his background is in math and finance, not traditional physics or government policy. So his tone is often alarmist and speculative, but that usually comes from having more knowledge. Okay, so you have to understand that, like, people that are in government, these are all players and actors, and none of them are actually governing. They're just there to pretend to the public that they're governing, but governing isn't actually happening. Okay, unless you have someone like, dare I say, a statesman like Obama, who actually played the game and did some good at the same time. You have someone like Nelson Mandela, who actually didn't play the game and just did good most of the time. FDR, who played the game and did good most of the time. Now, that was a different time, right? We don't have any FDRs today. None in government. Right now in the United States, there is not a single FDR, and there is not a single Obama. There is not a single McCain. These people, both Democrat and Republican, are all purchased by AIPAC or by interest groups, and they are not governing for us. They are extracting more money from us, and that is their one and only goal: oppressing us, extracting more money, and eroding anything that's going to give us more freedom and more liberty. And both parties are a part of this problem. So his geometric unity has drawn significant skepticism from physicists described as undercooked. When he speaks on politics or institutions, he often relies on metaphor rather than data, but data we know can be manipulated. So I think I prefer now to listen to metaphors and to kind of use common sense instead of manipulative data that's coming from someplace that manipulated it on purpose because they want you to think a certain way. So what some people call the big picture or big drama, thinking without clear proof. What is proof nowadays, though, right? When everything is artificially intelligent, generated, and we have no idea what is what, right? Like, does anyone even listen to polls anymore? When I read something like that on social media, I immediately scroll past it. I don't believe in any polls because no one ever calls me to ask me any questions. So where are you polling these people? It's all nonsense. It's all a facade. So the bottom line is that he's not actually reporting an actual government plan to physically castrate scientists. These are metaphors expressing strong concern about suppression of creativity, independence, and thought, which we are seeing. And the beginning of the end refers to a perceived cascade of cultural and institutional decay, which we are also seeing. So in comes this whole Jeffrey Epstein enormous cover up that we have been seeing for more than a decade, right? It started with the attorney general in Florida kind of just allowing him to do whatever when he was caught the first time, right? So this Eric Weinstein dude has publicly said that Jeffrey Epstein is clearly not a financier, and he was a construct, and everyone knew about it. So Weinstein once met with Epstein and declined a follow-up meeting, and has implied that Epstein's wealth and influence were a front for a larger intelligence operation, most likely the CIA, Massoud, so many, right? He suggests that Epstein may have been part of a honey trap network using sex and blackmail to control global elites. We recently saw Tucker Carlson kind of express the same sort of feeling. I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. He is also cosplaying for whatever fits his narrative, but I just wanted to mention that. Multiple governments, possibly, like I said, global agencies, definitely, and Mossad, may have been involved or at least complicit. His function was not to make money, but to compromise powerful people. The truth remains hidden because courts sealed the files. Ghislaine Maxwell's trial was quiet and limited in scope. Many powerful names, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Leon Black, etc., are publicly linked, but few face consequences. And, you know, it's important to note that, you know, how did a college dropout with no obvious talent become one of the wealthiest, most connected men on earth? And also, he taught math at the school of the Dalton School, right? Like, you know, the person that hired him was William Barr's father. Like, this is all, you know, connected. So how on earth did this happen? And the answer is quite simple if you just put two and two together. He was never real. He was a tool, a mechanism, an actor likely used by systems that do not want us to be free. So having said all of this, people lately that I speak to are living in fear, right? They're living in fear that their citizenship is going to get revoked, that they were born here, but their parents weren't, and are they going to get scooped up if they say anything on social media? Are they going to be flagged if they travel? And my advice to you is you cannot live in fear of anything, right? The only thing that's promised to all of us is death. So why do the powerful cling to control and try to stifle joy, love, creativity, and resistance? Because these people are terrified of irrelevance, and because they probably are irrelevant. Have you guys ever seen Peter Thiel in an interview? Number one, he's hideous looking. He looks like an alien, right? And also, he just has no soul. You can tell he's a very dead person inside, right? So these people fear being exposed or forgotten, or they live meaningless lives. Like, money does not buy happiness. So they project their fear onto society by manufacturing war, debt, pandemics, and panic, enforcing obedience through religion, media, and financial dependency, making people grateful just to survive so that they never dare to thrive. So the answer is living loud and living free. That is literally the cure. If death comes earlier than later, does that really matter? It's coming regardless. So the liberation is in your freedom. And that's what they fear. When a woman refuses to be shamed, when a queer person refuses to be hidden, when a working class person refuses to be silenced, when an immigrant refuses to shrink, when you say I have nothing to lose but my chains, you become untouchable. So how do you fight back? I've talked about this so many times on the ending of all of my episodes. So, and you know, my idea of fighting back is evolving. It evolves with every day that I live. It evolves with every person that I talk to. It evolves with the more research I do for my podcast, or the ways that I find that I want to live my life within this authoritarian structure that is the United States now, and that is actually the world, because this is a global shift. It's not just here. It is a global shift We as Americans are not used to it because that's not where we have ever been, but it's definitely where we're going. So the best way to fight back is to build independent media ecosystems. I've been saying this so much. Like, stop letting them control the narrative. You have to turn off the news. Turn off everything that's owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. This is not the way to a functioning society. We got to turn that shit off immediately. This is going to be controversial. You know what else you got to turn off? Anyone in your life that doesn't understand this. If you have anyone that surrounds you that is telling you things like let Gaza free the hostages and isn't really taking into account the fact that Israel has 3,000 Palestinian hostages, you cut them off, right? But these people are not evolved, and you can talk to them once, you can talk to them twice, but 3 strikes you're out. And I can't continue to convince people that they need to have empathy for other human beings, right? If you're dealing with elitism on one side, it is time to cut it off. Like, that's it. You have to platform voices that they fear. And the voices that they fear are the scientists, are the independent podcasts, are the people telling the truth, doing actual investigative discovery journalism. That's not happening on legacy media. If you can, fund documentaries, fund journalism, and like independent journalism. Teach media literacy. That's what I try to do on my podcast. I try to explain to you that, number one, a media literate population can't be gaslit. Number two, a media literate population is not easy to control. So, but people do not have media literacy. So many people are quoting things that they hear on TV. I'm shocked that no one has used the tools that we have to become more evolved. Everyone should be doing this. We have to decentralize wealth and organize local power. So ditch the banks that fund fascism, which is basically all of them. The only one that I saw that I didn't see on the list that was recently making its way through social media was Capital One. But basically, try to use credit unions, crypto, only Bitcoin, and cash. Support mutual aid, land trust, and worker-owned businesses. Push local legislation that protects rights, communities, and earth. We have to create cultural power. The Kardashians are not culture, right? Like we are. We have to fund our own music, our own art, films, fashion, education that tells the truth. Teach resistance. Start a school of sovereignty, digital or in person. Teach history of revolutions. Do some work. Do some research. Teach other people. Talk to other people. Teach a class. Teach financial autonomy. Teach political theory. Teach health sovereignty. Teach emotional resilience. Teach surveillance evasion. Like, organize with women. Women are the answer because patriarchy is the software of oppression. Women must start private economic groups, buy land, fund each other, run for office, protect each other online and offline. As I've said so many times, matriarchy is the only hope for the future. So in closing, I'd like to say that we see glimpses of people already fighting back by questioning, by speaking the truth, by refusing to live small, by fighting ICE on the street, by protecting their neighbor, protecting humankind, basically. The goal now is to organize the energy into systems that outlive you. So when they fail, you rise and we rise. They try to bury you consistently, and they have tried since the beginning of the formation of this country. They didn't know that we were the seeds. And our seeds have grown into these beautiful, powerful intellectual minds. And it is now time to literally water our seeds more than ever. Grow our plants and grow outside of the system. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus episode. I really wanted to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and Eric Weinstein and just the whole system in general, and keep you out of the sphere of fear. It doesn't bring you anything positive, and it's really important to stay focused on helping each other. See you next week.